Hey guys, so today I want to talk a little bit about The Walking Dead, and in particular the TV show, because I've been seeing a lot of it recently, especially with the spin-off shows with the Dead City, Daryl Dixon and The Ones Who Live. I've been seeing a lot of comments saying that The Walking Dead has gone on for too long and that the show needs to end. So I want to talk a little bit about why I think this is both true and not true at the same time. Yes, I love The Walking Dead and I wish it could never end. No, I don't think it should never end. But is now the right time to end it? So the first thing I want to talk about is the original comic that was planned in the end of the comics. Now, Robert Kirkman's original plan was to have it end at the end of book 14, No Way Out. And his idea was to have our group of survivors fight off this big horde, and sort of like we do in the end of the actual book, have Rick give this really big speech, this really powerful speech, and we just sort of fade out to this statue of Rick, and then we fade out some more, and we see that Alexandria has been taken over by the dead and by zombies. That was the original plan. That was what was originally intended to happen. No Way Out was supposed to be this big final boss battle where they kill all the zombies, and then that's it. Rick gives his speech, and there's just a statue of him, and nature still won. The zombies still ruled the land. Except that didn't happen. And we went on for another 18 books. So, where was the right time to end The Walking Dead? Well, at first, we've got to look at where the comics did end, and then where the comics should have ended, in my personal opinion. So, the comics actually ended in book 32, Rest in Peace, and it ended with the Commonwealth arc, which, a bit like the TV show, was a little bit underwhelming, but it was just sort of shoehorned in there a little bit, I think. Because personally, for me at least, looking at it, I think there are two possible points for where The Walking Dead could have ended. The first one is probably the most common with the TV show, not the comics, but I think it should have ended at the comics there, and that should have been the end of All Out War after book 21. So you had this big final two-part book. You had All Out War Part 1 and All Out War Part 2, books 20 and 21. And I think that the comic should have ended there. And yes, we wouldn't have got the whole Whisper arc, which was a lot better in the comics than it was in the TV show, but that's a story for another time. So, yes, you wouldn't have got that, but you also wouldn't have got the Commonwealth. Now, while I love the idea of a community that's 50,000 people strong, it just doesn't translate that well, in terms of you don't feel exactly how big the community is. You feel it a lot more in the comics than you do in the TV show, especially after the whole all-out war thing in the TV show. But in the comics, you really feel that sort of, oh my god, there is loads of people, because they've always kept the group smaller, because you don't have enough time to write about it in the comics. So for me, I think it should have ended there. I'm very grateful that we got, another 11 books, and I'm not going to complain about it too much. The second place, I think, would have been a little bit more difficult, but it still would have worked, is A Certain Doom. Now, a certain doom really felt, especially the first time reading it, it felt like a gut punch. I knew a little bit what was going to happen, because again, I'd watched the TV show and I'd watched a lot of analysis videos on the comics and on the TV show and on the differences, but it was still a big gut punch with how it ended and the conversations, and I won't get too much into it now, but the deaths, the emotions, and just how low Rick was brought after this high of, yes, we will beat the Whisperers, yes, Alpha's dead. It just all came crashing down, and it was heart-wrenching. But again, there were a lot of storylines. Beta just went missing, and that was resolved in book 29. So there's a whole thing there that you've got to try and pick apart which storylines you'd need to wrap up quickly, and which perhaps you could dismiss, and which you could maybe write a sort of epilogue on. So there's a whole thing there. Now, overall, the comics, they're beautiful. I wouldn't change them, but if I were going to end it, that's where I'd end. Although saying that, I do like Robert Kirkman's original ending for No Way Out. And while yes, The Walking Dead probably wouldn't have been as big of a hit as it was if it had ended there, but it still would have been good. It still would have been top tier stuff. So, ups and downs. Now, with the TV show, this is where things get muddy, because a lot of people say it's gone on for too long. And by a lot of people, I do mean quite literally. I mean, we had viewing figures were insane. I think 11 million off the top of my head for season 5. And throughout seasons 1 to 4, the numbers were just going up. Exponentially, they were just going up. But after season 5, they took a little bit of a hit. And then season 6's cliffhanger. Well, that was a fatal mistake in the world of The Walking Dead. And I know I don't like to criticise, but it was. The fact that people had to wait months, a lot of people had it spoiled, and people knew what was going to happen in the comics. And not only that, but Glenn's death was just overshadowed by Abraham. Abraham's death was just overshadowed by Glenn, sorry. So, why? If it were up to me, Abraham would have died season 6 finale, Glenn would have died season 7 opening. But season 7's premiere episode had all-time high ratings. It was really promising. And then the next episode aired and figures dropped dramatically. Terribly, in fact. And it never managed to quite pull back from that. Season 7 and 8 were absolute dumpster fires in terms of ratings. And personally, I like them. I like the fact that we've got this whole season that the group had just dragged down to the lowest of lows. And then in season 8, they're finally like, right, we're gonna fight back against Negan now. And they did. And then they killed off Carl in season 8. Now, I never liked Carl anyway, not in the TV show anyway. He was annoying and he made a lot of stupid decisions, but that's Carl's character. But I don't think it translated so well, because obviously Chandler Riggs was older, so Carl had to be older. So he wasn't, this 10-year-old kid anymore who was going after Negan with a machine gun. He was an older kid, a teenager. And it just didn't quite translate as good. Still, there's a whole debate there as to why he left, and whether he was just gone for shock value, and whether he was gone so that Rick had a reason to spare Negan, which is bananas, because Rick had a reason to spare Negan in the comics without Carl being dead, because Carl is the whole That's the whole story of The Walking Dead. Rick trying to raise his son in the apocalypse. So, yeah, we've got this of the death of Carl, and we got Rick's departure in season 9, episode 5, What Comes After. And the show kept going. It kept shambling on for another 2.5 seasons. And when time finally came round to end the show after season 11, and after the show had been cancelled out of seemingly nowhere, but that was the same with the comics, so there's not much of a surprise there. So, did the show end properly? The simple answer is no. A series finale should wrap up the entire story and close it off in a nice neat bow. Look at Breaking Bad, for example. Can't think of another good TV show that I've watched besides Doctor Who. Anyway, so it should wrap it up in a nice neat bow. Now, season 11, its finale, Rest in Peace, which is the same name as the final book, it felt more like a series finale or a season finale than a series finale. It felt like it was going to lead into another season. Now, of course, it was leading into the 3 spin-off shows, but it just didn't sit right with me. You know, you got Daryl out looking for Rick, and Michonne's out looking for Rick, and Negan and Maggie make up, except it turns out that they didn't quite make up in the spin-off, and it's a headache. Now, do I like the spin-offs? Well, the short answer is yes. I will always be down for more Daryl. I will always be down for more Maggie and Negan. I will always be down for more Rick and Michonne. Fear the Walking Dead, I still haven't finished yet, but it's alright. I like the different setting. I like the different characters. Some of them anyway. I mainly just watch it for Morgan, but that's well, it's just my opinion. Tales of the Walking Dead, I only watched that one episode with Alpha. Sue me, I know, terrible. And then we've got The Walking Dead World Beyond. Now, I'm working my way through that at the moment and hoping to finish it before The Ones Who Live. Honestly, it's got some pretty interesting concepts, but I cannot stand the characters. So, but I'll be doing a review of that later. So, back to the point. Yes, The Walking Dead has gone on for too long. No, I won't complain about it, ever. Well, for the most part, I won't complain about it. So, where should the TV show have ended? Well, first of all, we've always got the ending that was originally intended in the comics with regards to Rick and Alexandria, but that wouldn't have happened because the show was still at its height. So then you look at ratings and you look at the story and you think, well, it could have ended after season 8. Yes, it very well could have, but you've got to think, instead of ending it, they changed showrunner, and that saved the program in a lot of ways. You know, you had going into season 9 this very old westy vibe with the horses, the bows and arrows. It felt more like what, especially timeline wise, what an apocalypse should feel like. You know, because we haven't got infinite ammo, we haven't got infinite petrol. This is how it should be. So I reckon season 8, possibly the end of or the end of season 10B, but I think season 8 was the only real point where they could have jumped off safely without having things left over. Should there be more spin-offs? Probably not. Although reading interviews, I have to say that I think if The Ones Who Lives does well, they'll probably do a second season of that. They're currently producing the second season of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon and Dead City. But I think if they do any more spin-offs, they need to finish the stories in the next couple of seasons of the spin-offs that we've got at the moment, because they will die out quickly. And once they've done that, they need to do the crossover event that Scott Gimple was talking about, and they need to then leave it alone. Have this big crossover event where you've got characters from Fear, characters from World Beyond, characters from The Walking Dead, characters from Daryl Dixon, Dead City, The Ones Who Live. Have them all take on the CRM, but then put this universe to rest and give the rights over to HBO to let them do an animated reboot, or just a reboot even. If HBO do end up doing a reboot, I still think it should be animated, but it'll have to depend on how well Invincible does in the next few years. But honestly, I love The Walking Dead. I will always watch it, but this universe, it does need an end. It's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was great. It had a goal. It had an end game. Ironic that I said that, but it had an end game, and then it went past it, and it's just been going downhill. So the real question is, how long can they keep pushing this show until it loses steam? Because as much as everyone's excited to see Rick, and to see Rick and Daryl unite, and Rick and Michonne unite, and Negan and Maggie do whatever they're doing, I don't think anyone's actually truly excited for that. But the point stands. People are excited for this, but once that happens, once you've had these reunions, what then? It's like the Marvel Universe. Once you've defeated Thanos, what comes after? Once you've had these reunions, no one's going to care. Ultimately, I don't think anyone will care if they do a whole new spin-off explaining the backstory of the CRM and how the CRM started to form and things like that, where it came from. No one's going to care. I think ultimately you need to have one final spin-off where you have everyone reunite and the CRM come and fight them at the same time, and then just end it there. It won't get a happy ending. It's The Walking Dead. It shouldn't get a happy ending. I can't stress that enough. It really shouldn't. Some characters should live, but I personally think that Rick should die in the end, like he did in the comics, like it should happen. But we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully in the next couple of days I'm going to finish World Beyond, and then, well, we'll see from there. So I'll catch you guys in the next one.